My name is João Pedro Vigini, and I'm gonna talk about the work, the life, and some curiosities about Edgar Allan Poe. So, firstly, he was born in Boston on January 19 in the year of 1809. His parents were actors, but when he was only 3 years old, both of them died. After that, Poe was raised by the wealthy tobacco merchant John Allan and his wife Frances Valentine Allan in Richmond, Virginia, while his brother and sister went to live with other families. Mr. Allan raised Poe to be a businessman and a Virginia gentleman, but Poe dreamt of being like the British poet Lord Byron. The backs of some of Allan's ledgers sheets reveal early poetic verses scrawled in a young Poe's handwriting and show how little interest Edgar had in the tobacco business as well as how he was born to be a writer. When he was 36 years old, he published The Raven, which made him a well-known person. He was now famous enough to attract large crowds to his lectures. He also began demanding better pay for his work. He published 2 books that year and briefly lived his dream of running his own magazine when he bought out the Broadway Journal. On the other hand, many bad things happened. The venture failed, rumors about Poe's relationship with a married woman were spreading fast, and his wife died. Her death devastated Poe and left him unable to write for months. His critics assumed he would soon be dead. They were right. Poe only lived another 2 years and spent much of that time traveling from one city to the next, giving lectures and finding backers for his latest proposed magazine project to be called The Stylus. Finally, he was dead in 1848 and, before that, spent over 4 days feeling a lot of pain. A curious fact around that is that he was using the clothes of another person. So, some curiosities about him is that nowadays there is an elementary school with his name in Houston, Texas, the Edgar Allan Poe Elementary School. And also, the murders in the Rue Morgue was the first modern detective story ever. It was published even before the famous Sherlock Holmes by Arthur Conan Doyle. And in the end, the cause of Poe's death is still a mystery. Nobody knows the cause of his death.
Hello, my name is João Otávio, and I will make a brief summary of half of the plot of the work, The Murders in the Rue Morgue. Dupin, the protagonist, constantly went to the library of his city. One day, he met his future friend, the storyteller. It didn't take long for Dupin to demonstrate his incredible reasoning power to his new friend. Walking through the streets of Paris with his friend, they stopped in front of the home of 2 women who were brutally murdered. So, they begin to reflect on what happened. In this part, a new narrator, this time omniscient, describes the murder of an elderly woman and her daughter, who lived on the 4th floor of a building on Rue Morgue. First, the neighborhood heard screams. They were frightened. They more quickly entered the woman's apartment to find out what was going on. They reported hearing voices, 2 actually, a low voice in French and another loud voice in another language unknown to witnesses. When the authorities arrived, there was blood everywhere. The body of the old woman's daughter was trapped over the fireplace, while the body of the old woman was behind the house on the floor. A terrifying scene. After remembering the case, Dupin decides to investigate the murder on his own, saying he would solve the mystery. In principle, his partner is afraid. However, knowing of Dupin's skills, he decides to support him, probably because he really hoped that his friend would solve the case. When they arrive at the scene of the murder, Dupin spends a while coldly analyzing the environment around him, and after a while decides to leave. At home, Dupin says that the key to solving the mystery lies in the fact that the witnesses agreed that the low voice heard on the night of the murder was a Frenchman, and they agreed, albeit indirectly, that the loud voice was incomprehensible.
My name is Gabriel Callegari, and I'm gonna talk about parts of summary. So, part 4. Dupin was determined that he would solve the case. He knew that the killer was not a spirit but a man, made of flesh and blood, and before he would have had to leave the building somehow. Dupin knew that the killer could only have used the window to escape, so he went out the window, and that was a fact. However, the authorities had concluded that it would be impossible for him to go out the window, due to the fact the window was locked by a nail inside the apartment, and obviously it would be impossible to look the window from the outside. With that, Dupin concludes that he had only to prove that the killer could have gone out the window, and consequently the conclusion won't be obvious. He found that the nail that apparently looked the windows was useless in apartment window. Thus, it was proving that it was impossible for the killer to use the window to escape. Of course, so did Face. Now, Dupin should investigate the surroundings of the house. Part 5. Outside, Dupin noticed a giant cable connecting the floor to the roof of the house. He guesses that the killer used the cable to climb. In time, he concludes that the murderer are his accomplice. By now, Dupin already suspects that there were either two murderers or one murder and one accomplice. Must be very strong, perhaps a sailor, he said, because only someone strong could rise and come down from the building holding on that cable. Later, he decided to enter the apartment again, analyzing the marks on the old woman's neck. He realizes that it was not woman's hands that to her. Furthermore, looking at the old woman's body, he realized that the old woman's red had been torn off with one hand and not with the knife present at the crime scene. He also finds no woman hair. Having all this in hand, he concludes that it is a woman orangutan that killed the woman. Part 6. Dupin returned home and decided to put a note in the newspaper saying that they found a lost orangutan in city and wanted to return into Warner, who he said was even a sailor. As expected, he receives a visit from the sailor and intimidates him to tell the truth about the case. He decides to tell, since Dupin had a firearm in his hands. His orangutan had run him for home, so he started walking around the city aimlessly until he entered the old Alman house. With the lights on and the cable connecting the floor to the roof leaning against the building's wall, and there ended up killing them. The orangutan unintentionally scared the woman, who went screaming in the fright. Scared the orangutan that in act of defense killed them. A strange case, isn't it? What do you think?
My name is João Pedro Pires Vargas, and I will talk about the characters in this story. We can start with C. Augustine Dupin, a friend of the narrator, and was once poor, but moved into the narrator's mansion and lived there rent-free, after he met him in a bookstore and was asked to join him. The narrator in this book is a first-person narrator that is included in the story itself. He is a book lover, and that's actually how he met Dupin. He investigates the murder with his friend Dupin. Mademoiselle Camille L'Espanaye and Madame L'Espanaye. They were the murder victims. Sailor is the owner of the orangutan, and although he was there, he wasn't involved in any of the murders. There are some other characters in the story, such as the policeman that didn't like the fact that Dupin solved the mystery because he thought Dupin and non-policemen should mind their own business. Also, there were the neighbors who first entered the house after the murder and became suspects, but aren't very important to the story, since it was developed without mentioning them again.
My name is Arthur Saiter, V6, and I'm about to give my opinion on the short story I read, The Murders on the Rue Morgue. Well, I think the short story was at the same time surprising and disappointing, which I know is something difficult to understand, but I will try to explain. Well, when I read or watch a thriller story, I usually expect something that will stick my mind on that and will make me turn into some kind of detective, will make me try to investigate the mystery, to solve the mystery. And I think that is what a good thriller story should make happen. Well, and I found that on the Murders on the Rue Morgue. I thought very surprising the way Dupin discovered things, how he followed the leads, how the author worked with thriller, and how he made us trying to investigate the murders, following the leads with Dupin, just like I said should happen. Although it was very difficult to follow Dupin's thoughts, he clearly had some special skills which they explained at the story, but in my opinion is pretty much fictional because it's something that I've never seen before, and I really don't think that really exists. But until there, I was enjoying a lot. I was enjoying a lot the reading. I was expecting something huge, uh, because it was a story that I heard by friends, that was really great. Quoting a friend of mine, she said, "Really great. Read it, read it. Will blow your mind." So I said, "Okay, I will," and I read. But I expected special skills of the murder. Like Dupin had a capacity that was extraordinary. He could read people's thoughts, he could follow people's thoughts just like he did with his friend and what he used to solve the mystery. So I expected something special, but not unreal, not something out of reality from the murder. In a nutshell, I expected an amazing and surprising story, but also a realistic story. When I found out the killer was an animal, I wasn't surprised at all that he could do all that, because all became fictional, uh, and all made me a little disappointed, because I thought the story was about to become something wonderful, like in the end, when it was supposed to be the high point of the story. And I felt like it became a lower point. The and it wouldn't have any higher point possible because the story came to its end. So I liked the short story. I would I would recommend to a friend, but I would not say that it was an amazing story. I would say, okay, it's good, read it, enjoy as much as you can, but of course, everyone can think different. But this is my opinion about the short story The Murders on the Rue Morgue.